Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Jeff, and I spent 23 years, 5 months, and a few days in the United States Army. But who's counting? Now, the number one question I get asked by most people, it's actually a variation of the same question, and that is, would you do it again or was it worth it? Now, that's pretty difficult to answer that question, and I'm going to tell you why. Because people ask questions with different things in mind. So some people would ask me that question and think, just from a financial standpoint, like while you were in, did you get paid well? And then clearly after 20 years, you can draw a pension. So they're asking from that standpoint, which is financial. But I mean, to be honest with you, sometimes there wasn't enough money in the world to pay me for what I was doing. And other times I felt like I was robbing a bank because I was on a 4-day weekend and I was getting paid for it. Now, the other part of that question is quality of life, experiences, things you did. Would you do it again from that aspect? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to answer all of these questions and kind of wrap it all up into one. But the way I'm going to do that is the first thing I need to do is to tell you my Army story. And basically what my Army story is, the events leading up to me joining the Army, my time in the Army, and then after the Army. So buckle up, guys, because we're going to go through this. It's going to be one long video and it's going to give you everything. Because I don't know the reason you're watching this video. Maybe you're someone who wants to join the Army and want to know what you're getting into. Well, I got something for you too. Maybe you're somebody who's midway through your career and is having second thoughts. I can answer that for you too, or at least give you my perspective. Or let's just say you want to get entertained by someone who's going to tell you a story about their time in the Army. Well, I got you covered too. But in order to start this story, we got to go back to the beginning. And the beginning for me is around October of 1996. Yes, I'm that old. I was a junior in high school in 1996, and I got the great idea that I'm going to join the National Guard. All right. Now, I know what you're saying. That's not the Army. I agree with you, but I got to get you to when I joined the Army first. And the first step in that process was joining the National Guard. So it's my junior year of high school, and that's what I get in my head. Now, mind you, I'm a solid C student, so I had a lot of college prospects. Psych. But anyway, I marched down, no pun intended, to the recruiter's office. His name was Staff Sergeant Hicks. I'll never forget him. He was about 6 foot tall, thin dude, short hair, just looked the part of a recruiter. So I went into his office and I was like, hey, I want to join the National Guard. And he was like, cool. And from what I thought, he signed me up immediately. Like I did some paperwork and all of that. And from that moment on, they treated me like I was in the Guard. Now, I hadn't went down and done a physical or signed a contract or anything. It turns out I was kind of waiting on that time. When you join from your senior year, and this is the Guard or the Reserves, it's actually what's called the split option. And what the split option is, you finish your junior year, then you go to your basic training between your junior and senior year. Then you come back, you finish your senior year of high school, and then after your senior year of high school, you go to your AIT, which is Advanced Individual Training, which is for your MOS, which is Military Occupational Specialty. All that is saying you go to the school for your job and you learn your job. So that was unbeknownst to me. I thought I was in. So fast forward a couple of weeks, we go to our first drill. In the National Guard, it's 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, and that's pretty much when you work. Now, mind you, of the time of year I'm talking about, my first drill was in November. So that's going to be important. We're going to come back to that. So I go to the first drill, and the first drill I go to, they're going to qualify with their M16s. They are going to the range and they're doing their weapons qualification, their annual weapons qualification. You do it once a year. You have to qualify with your weapon. Now, this is my first drill. So they're giving a 17-year-old kid an M16. I go down there, I go through the process to zero it, and I actually shoot and qualify. So I'm like, man, this is cool, dude. The first drill I went to, we're out there shooting guns. So cool. Wrap up that drill. Then we go to the second drill, right? So the second drill was the Army Physical Fitness Test. If you're unfamiliar with that, it's 2 minutes of push-ups, 2 minutes of sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. Now, mind you, they have changed. The Army now does the ACFT, which is the Army Combat Fitness Test, but that's neither here nor there. We're back in the 90s. We're not to now yet, but we'll get there. So we do the physical fitness test, and I'm 17. I'm in good shape. Played sports my whole life, wrestled in high school. You know what I mean? It was no problem. I'm looking around at some of these older guys. I'm like, dang, man, these dudes is on the struggle bus out here. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself, right? So that's the next drill. So I got 2 down, and I'm like, man, this thing is awesome, dude. First one, I go shoot guns. The second one, we're doing all this physical fitness stuff. But then we get to the third one. Now, remember, I told you this was November. I signed up in October, November. Well, what you've got to remember is the military's fiscal year starts the 1st of October. So it was just a coincidence that the first drill after the start of the FY was the weapons qualification because they wanted to get it done for the year. And then the next month was the physical fitness test. So they wanted to get those 2 things done, and then all the stragglers, the people who didn't qualify or didn't pass the PT test, they'd have the rest of the year to kind of figure out how they were going to get that done. So that was unbeknownst to me. But then come to my third drill, we get there to the armory. That's where the National Guard goes. It's called the armory. Dude, we sit there Saturday, 9 to 5, do nothing. Sunday, 9 to 5, do nothing. I'm sitting there like, yo, man, what's going on? We ain't do nothing. All right. So I'm like, all right, cool. I mean, we had a good 2. So now we get a little down one. No big deal. So I go to the next drill. Same thing. Then the third one, same thing. I quickly learned that a lot of my experience in the Guard was hurry up and get this stuff done and do nothing. Now, that is a common theme in the Army, hurry up and wait. But I didn't think I was going to be waiting for months on end. Not to mention, I was struggling in school, right? I discovered skipping school because I was 17. I had a car and I was not doing that hot in school. But anyway, I just quit going to the drills. Nobody came. Nobody said anything to me. Yada, yada, yada. It just was what it was. Anyway, I start going back to high school on my senior year. And I learned pretty quickly. I was on the work program, right? What that was when I was in school was you go to homeroom and then you go to like 3 classes. Then you go to this business class. Mr. Davis was the teacher. And then after that class, you get out at 11:15 to go to work. I had a job. I was working at the hometown buffet. I was a cook at the hometown buffet, slinging all the food. So I was good. Well, the hustle was I would go to homeroom so I wouldn't get counted absent for the day. And then I would just bounce from school. But I would come back and go to the business class. So fast forward to the end of the school year, and your boy did not have enough credits to graduate. I was a half a credit short. And if you can believe it, of all the classes, I was a half a credit short in gym. I did not graduate high school. Okay, I did not walk. I did not get a diploma. I did not get anything because I was a half credit short in gym. Now that's going to come into play in a little bit. It's a reason I'm telling you that. So I graduate high school. The award ceremony, like 2 days before graduation, the recruiter, all my buddies were there, but the recruiter announced this big scholarship check for Private Jeffrey Frazier to go to college. And he was like AWOL. So I was not there to receive that. And again, like I said, I didn't graduate. But anyway, I ended up not shipping out the training for the National Guard. Now, fast forward to that, the summer had ended and my mom and dad was like, look, dude, you just turned 18. I was 17 and you just turned 18. Hey, guy, I had quit my job by then. I was like on a full-fledged, let's just go party. So I had quit my job. I wasn't working. I wasn't going to school. I wasn't doing nothing. My parents was like, hey, dude, look, bro, you have either got to go to school or you got to get a job because you ain't going to stay here and just go out. Because I was getting in trouble because my mom and dad got up for work at 6 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes I was passing them coming in the door from being out with my partners. Shout out to Steve and Aaron. That's my boys. They'll know who I'm talking about. But anyway, so I said, you know what? I'm going to go to school. So I signed up for classes at good old Richmond Community College, right? Dude, I went to like 4 classes and I was like, dude, forget this. This is cutting into my day. I got to get up early. And I just quit going. But my mom and dad would always ask me, hey, how's school going? I would be like, cool. Anyway, stuff hit the fan after, because I conned them for like 4 or 5 months, right? Till like January. Then it all came out that I hadn't been going to school and it was a big deal. So that was the point. I'm like, look, dude, I gotta go. I gotta do something. What's something I can get up out of here pretty quick? and that was the Army. So I went down and talked to the Army recruiter, because the National Guard and the regular Army is different. And his name was Sergeant Cassidy. Shout out. I'll never forget that dude. So I met with Sergeant Cassidy and yada, 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 did all the paperwork, took the test, all of that stuff. And I go down and I take the physical and I get physically qualified and all of that stuff. You know what? No, let me back up. I had took the test and everything. Well, come to find out, I needed to be discharged from the National Guard, right? Which I didn't even know. And I didn't know this. I did not know this for 20 years till I'm going through my retirement stuff and I see a discharge from the National Guard. But anyway, that dude did all the legwork for that. So then he needed my source documents. Source documents are birth certificate, social security card, photo ID, high school diploma. Obviously, I got 3 of the 4, right? He's like, what's up with your diploma? Man, I ain't graduate. Let me tell you what this dude did. This dude went down to my high school, Stephen Decatur High School, and I do not know how he did it, but he convinced these people to give him my diploma. And he was basically like, hey, look, man, this kid wants to join the Army. He's going to get all the physical training he needs, but he can't join without this diploma. Now, that guy must have been a silver-tongued devil, because that dude got the diploma and he showed up at my door with a diploma. He's like, boom, what's up? We going to do this? So anyway, they set up for me to go down, take the physical, and join the Army. Now, I went down to MEPS, which is Military Entrance Processing Station. That's where you go to join the Army. It's in St. Louis, so it's 85 miles from Decatur, where I'm from, to St. Louis. So I go down there with a buddy of mine, man, Aaron, same dude I had mentioned earlier. So we had this plan, man. We're gonna go down to the thing, and we're gonna join the Army, and we're gonna be infantry, airborne, ranger. We doing all of that stuff. I think Con Air had come out, and the dude in Con Air was a ranger, and we were like, dude, we're gonna do that stuff. Okay, that's what we're thinking, right? So we get down there. Well, come to find out, when we're going through the physical, my boy Aaron coughs up, marijuana use. And he's disqualified. Not disqualified, but temporarily disqualified. They're like, dude, you got to come back, when your system's clean. Well, I passed the physical, and I'm sitting down there, and they're like, hey, what are we going to do, guy? And I'm like, dang, bro. So I go in to the guidance counselor's office, right? The guidance counselors are basically the ones that do your contract and put you in the Army. Now, I'm sitting there, and they're like, what do you want to do? Now, the Army does guarantee your job, meaning you pick the job. The catch is it's got to be available. See, now when you go to the recruiting station and to join the Army, they print you out what's called a FSR2S, and that is a Future Soldier Temporary Reservation. So you pick the job in the recruiter office, provided you qualify for it, and then you got that piece of paper. It's good for 7 days. You go down and join. The reason I know all this is my last 12 years in the Army, I was a recruiter, so I can kind of speak on some of the recruiting stuff. But we're going to get to that. But that's neither here nor there, right? So I'm down there, and I'm in the guidance counselor's office, and I'm like, man, I want infantry, airborne, ranger, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, that wasn't leaving soon enough. By the grace of God, because I would not have made it in the infantry. I'm lying. I ain't going to say I wouldn't have made it, but knowing what I know now, that was not a path for me. I said, look, well, what? And they were very good at their job. They were like, what can get you? I was like, what can get me out of here the soonest? And they were like, we can get you out of here in like 3 weeks as a 77 Fox. And that is petroleum supply specialist. I had no idea what that was. It has since changed to 92 Fox. Same job, just different, numbers and letters. And they were like, and that one comes with a $7,000 bonus. And then me being a dummy, I'm like, oh, I want to travel. Can you get me to Korea? And they kind of looked at me and was like, yeah, we can put that in your contract. Because I ain't going to lie to y'all. Nobody really, I ain't going to say nobody, but not many people are trying to actually go get stationed in Korea. It's like a year-long hardship tour. I'm going to get there because I was there for a year. But anyway, so they put all that in my contract. Boom. I'm leaving in like 3 weeks. So it is what it is. My boy Aaron, he's mad at me. He's like, man, I thought we was going together. I thought we was going to be Rangers. I'll never forget the way he said that. Rangers. He just had a way that he said it. But anyway, so we go back and like, dude, it's about time for me to go. Then we get to my ship day, right? And what happens on the ship day, which they have since changed since I joined the Army. Now, when you go to ship out, you go to the hotel the night before. They put you up in a hotel. You go back through the physical screening. All they do is ask you if anything's changed. And then you take off on your flight from there. But for me, I had to get up at a butt crack of dawn and we drove down to St. Louis because you got to be there at 6 to go through medical. So it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. The recruiter's picking me up at 4. My mom and dad are like getting ready to say their goodbyes. And your boy is like, man, I ain't going. I changed my mind. And it was like, it was crazy. But my mom and dad sat me down and talked to me. And my dad was like, look, man, it's not just your name on this contract, it's my name too. You know, when you're a man, you do things. So he went through that spiel and I was like, yeah. But the deciding factor was when my mom said, hey man, this dude went to this school and I got this diploma for you. Basically, like, you owe him. Like, you said you was gonna do this, you owe him. So anyway, we went through that whole rigmarole. You know, we shed our little tears and I left. So I go down, boom, go through the MEPS, and then we fly out. And I'm flying out of St. Louis International Airport and I land at Columbus, Georgia, which is where I went to basic training, Fort Benning, Georgia. Now this is just hearsay, but I was told when we went through there, we were the first non-infantry company to go through Fort Benning since like the Vietnam War, since like the 60s or 70s. I don't know that to be true, but I do know that Fort Benning is the home of the infantry. That's where they go to school. So to me, it was basic training was a little bit more intense than like say Fort Jackson. I mean, Fort Jackson's nickname is Relaxin' Jackson. You know what I'm saying? So, but anyway, so we get there, right? And I go to 30th AG. That's the reception center at Fort Benning. I'm going to tell y'all what, man, this place was intimidating because it's a bunch of people, dudes, it's all dudes that don't know each other, right? And we're in, it reminded me of a jail or prison, except, you know, in a jail, the bars go up and down. In a prison, but these bars went left and right. There was no like doors with that stuff, but it just had that feel. And I tell y'all what, man, that first night that I was in 30th AG, I ain't gonna lie to y'all, man, it was a little tear. I was like, I was doing a little, you know what I'm saying, in the bed. I wasn't the only one. I done heard some other dudes. You know, it is what it is. But I had it all worked out in my head on that first night there. I said, man, I'm gonna go talk to the commander and I'm just gonna explain to him like, yo, I made a mistake. I messed up. I just need to go home. So I didn't do that. And I was a year in reception for about a week. And as the days went slow, you know what I'm saying? Because you get there, the first thing you do is a physical assessment. Because if you can't do the minimum, they hold you there until you can do like the minimum. So they don't, I guess, kill you when you go to basic training. But like I said, I was straight physically. I had no issues with that. But then you kind of go through there, you get a bunch of briefings, you get a bunch of classes, you get measured, you got to get your uniforms, you got to get all that stuff. So anyway, each day got a little better. I think night 1, a little bit of waterworks, night 2, a little waterworks, but then, 3 days, 4 days, you're kind of getting used to not being around your family. Because I was born and raised in Decatur, Illinois, at the same house. Like, I lived at the same house from when I was born to when I joined. Like, I didn't move. The furthest I had been away from home in the east was Ohio because we have family there. And into the west was Texas. And not even far into Texas, like Dallas, Texas. That's as far as I had gone away from home. So I was in Columbus, Georgia in May, going into June. It was hot. But anyway, then we start going into basic training. And I ain't going to go through no war stories of basic training, but it's every day got a little bit better, got a little bit easier. And when I say easier, I don't mean the Army stuff was easier. I'm talking about psychologically. You know what I'm saying? You're growing. You're away from your family, your parents that you've known, that you've seen every day, and you start growing psychologically. Now, as far as basic training in, the Army, I'm not going to say it was, don't get me wrong when I say it wasn't hard or challenging, because some aspects of it were, but they give you all of the keys to get it. I mean, it's engaging. You're there. I mean, it's from sun up to sundown, and you are there. There was never a point where I thought I was going to fail out of it, but it's like a class in school that you take that's like, it's not really hard, but it's not easy. You got to kind of pay attention and follow along, but you know you're confident that you're going to do it, if that makes sense. That's kind of what basic training is like. They've been doing this for a long time, breaking down bite-sized information and getting it to you. So I was never worried that I was going to fail out. Now, I will give you the absolute best tip you can have going into basic training: be in shape, because you do PT, which is physical training, every morning. You are doing that every morning. If you are not in that good of shape and you're going out for a 3 or 4 mile run and you're just dragging tail, that makes for a very long day. But if you're in decent shape, you know what I'm saying? You're tired for a little bit and then you're on and popping. So the dudes that wasn't in that great of shape, it was probably more challenging in the first few weeks. But then you get, down the road, everything gets a little easier. Now, I'm going to tell you the most challenging time that I had while I was in basic training, but I need to put some context to it for you. I am not a big guy. Well, I am now because I'm in my 40s. But when I joined the Army at 18 years old, I was 5'7" and I weighed 127 pounds. I wrestled at high school at 119. So I was thin. I was frail. Now, one of the requirements to graduate basic training is a 12-mile road march with a certain pound rucksack in a certain amount of time. So now fast forward to where we are in basic training. You had done the road marches, right? But the issue was, since we were the first non-infantry company to go through there were some people in infantry school that had failed their last road march. Now, here was the difference. Infantry is called OSUT, which is one station unit training. They do their basic training and their advanced individual training together. Instead of 8 weeks of basic training, they had 13 weeks and everything was kind of combined. And their culminating event was, I believe it was a 15-mile road march in a certain amount of time. Being infantry, they did, a little bit more. So, and basic training has now changed. It's now 9 weeks. But they've added a Combat Lifesaver, CLS. It's an annual certification that everybody has to do in the Army, Combat Lifesaver. And they decided, rather than send people to their units and have to get them trained for school, just do it in basic and they're good for a year. That's neither here nor there. So basic training is now pretty much 9 weeks, 4 days, I think is what I briefed everybody, with the 4 days for reception integration. But anyway, going back to this road march, right? So we had a 15-mile road march that we had to go a little bit more than everybody else. Now, I'm marching, right? And I'm in the last company, meaning, you go and everybody's walking. There's like 4 companies. We were in the last one. The reason that's significant is, after the last company, there's a truck back there, or multiple trucks, for the people to fall out, right? That don't make it. And then there's a drill sergeant in front of that truck, and he's kind of like the deciding factor, like, hey, you fell back behind me, you need to get to the truck. Well, here's the issue with road marches for me. Being 5'7", I'm already frail. I'm 120 pounds with the rucksack. But a forced road march, which is what they call it, they have to maintain a certain pace, right? So a taller person, 6'2", 6'3", that is more in line with their natural stride. So for somebody shorter like me, my legs aren't long enough to keep the pace. So what I do, and what the shorter guys were doing, was kind of like a slinky, right? You would fall back a little bit just because of the pacing, and then you would run up to get to the guy, that you're behind, and then you'd fall back a little bit, and then you would run up and fall back a little bit more, right? Well, the significance of being in the last company is I was falling back, and I was looking, and that drill sergeant was getting a little closer and a little closer. His name was Drill Sergeant Stuckey, matter of fact. So I'd fall back, catch back up, then I'd fall back a little bit more. And when you're in basic training, you're terrified of the drill sergeants. And it's not like a physical thing, although most of them were physically imposing. It's just that they're in the authority figure, getting yelled at, all of that stuff. But my issue was, I have made it through, 8 weeks of this stuff. This is the last thing. Like, I have got to finish this. I had no idea how far we had gone. I had no idea where we were, how far we had left. All I know is I'm looking at the dude ahead of me and I just need to run up and catch him and keep going like that. Anyway, eventually I fall back and Drill Sergeant Stuckey is right there and I'm like freaking out and I hear footsteps, right? And he walks up to me. And this was a significant event for me, a significant emotional event in basic training. And he walked up to me and he was like, "Hey, Private, we are almost there." He's like, "We have less than a mile left. I have been watching you. You've been gutting it out. You got heart. Do not fall back behind me. You can do this. We're almost there." And that gave me the little extra oomph that I needed. I sprinted back up, caught up to the guy, and we finished the road march, right? So yay, finished the road march, all of this stuff. So then after that, my parents came down for the graduation. You know, that was a proud moment, went out to dinner and all that. But the next day, I'm on a plane to Fort Lee, Virginia for my advanced individual training. Fort Lee, Virginia was the home of the quartermaster school. And like I told you, I was a 77 Fox petroleum supply specialist. So went there, went through AIT, nothing significant there. The only significant thing that happened was when I first got there, they were like, "Hey, does anybody want to go to airborne school?" And I was like, "Man, I'll go to airborne school." So I volunteered. I volunteered to go airborne. But then like 3 weeks in, I'm like, "Forget this, dude. I ain't jumping out of no plane." And I denied it. Well, what happened was that caused my initial contract to be invalidated, right? Because I volunteered for the training and then denied it. But what it also caused was when I graduated AIT, I became a holdover. And basically like a holdover is you don't have an assignment. So I was a holdover there for months before I got my assignment. But finally I got an assignment, which was Fort Lewis, Washington. And it was around Christmas time that I went out, and that was my first duty station. Now, Fort Lewis was great. I loved it. The cool thing was when I first hit the ground there, they were like, "Hey, guy, don't unpack your bags because we are getting ready to go to Cobra Gold in Thailand." So basically, there's an Operation Cobra Gold every year in Thailand. I don't know if they still do it, but they was doing it pretty recently. But basically, the services take turns on who's going to run it. It'll be the Department of the Navy one year, the Army the next year. Well, in 1999, I want to say, 99, it was the Army. So we went over there. I'm 18 years old. Maybe I was 19 by that time. In Thailand, bro. It was amazing. The only thing I had to do every morning, I was stationed in a combat support hospital. So think of the TV show MASH, right? So all it was a bunch of doctors and nurses, but I was in the motor pool with the guys that kind of set the hospital up. It's a mobile hospital that gets set up, and then all the electricity, it runs off generators, right? So I was there to refuel the generators. I think we had 7 to 9 generators running at any time. So that's what I did. At 6 in the morning and 6 at night, I refueled the generators. Other than that, the time was ours. And let me tell y'all what, we went out every night when we was in Thailand. Every night we was out. I can't remember the name. I don't even remember the name of the city that we was in. I remember going to some of the clubs because, we couldn't drink in the States. But in Thailand, ain't no drinking age over there. So we was getting tore down every night. And I don't say that like I quit drinking like 10 years ago, but I mean, what am I going to do? I'm 18 years old. But anyway, that was a blast. I felt like I was robbing the government when I was over there because I was working for maybe an hour or two a day and then we was out partying every night. So that was legit. Came back to Fort Lewis and I was on assignment already. My entire first duty station I was there for 13 months because my report date to Korea was like in February. And 3 months of that, I was in Thailand. You know what I'm saying? So I was not there very long. So I was on assignment to Korea. So I got to Korea in, I want to say February of 2000. And I was up north in Korea. I was at Camp Hovey, which if you're familiar, it was attached to Camp Casey. But that was an interesting time. In Korea, I was in a 217th Field Artillery. So I went from like one of the most chill units in the Army, a medical unit with a bunch of doctors and nurses, to a Field Artillery unit, which is combat arms. But it wasn't very bad. We had a good crew. All we did, we went out, we refueled the Paladins. We called it the R3SP, which was basically like a class 3 resupply point. We set it up, we fueled them up, And then that was pretty cool. So my time in Korea flew by. I would definitely go back to Korea, but I would rather be in a different unit because or a different kind of unit. We spent a lot of time in the field. Basically, in the Army, you go to what's called the field, right? And that's you are out in the woods playing your war stuff. And in Korea, we would go sometimes as little as 7 days up to, they have 30 and 45-day field problems. Maybe not 45, but 30. I've been on a couple 30 days, like Foul Eagle is the name of one over there. So yeah, it was okay. But if I had the choice, I wouldn't be in that type of unit. But it was cool, man. I met some good people. We went out to TDC, which is Tong Du Chong. That's where you could go out and hang out at the nightlife. And then that was on Casey. And then Hovey had Tokari, and they had a gate. The only issue was you had a curfew in Korea. We had to be back by noon. And don't miss curfew because, bro, they go close that gate. You in a world of trouble. But anyway, it was a good time. After my tour ended in Korea, I went back to Fort Lewis. And I was in the 528th Quartermaster Company, which was legit. It was a bunch of fuelers, right? It was like 150. I don't know how many people was there, but it was all mostly my MOS. So I was like, okay, cool. And what we did was we set up the FSSP, which is the Fuel System Supply Point. Basically, it's big fuel bags they start out, there's some small 2,000 gallon ones, 5,000 gallon, 10,000 gallon, 50,000, all the way up. The biggest is a 210,000 fuel bag, which we had in Afghanistan. This is like later down the road. But so I was in 528 Quartermaster Company. And while I was there, they were like, hey, we need somebody to go to Honduras for 6 months. And I was like, put me in, coach. So basically, back then at Soto Cano Air Base in Honduras, they had what's called Joint Task Force Bravo. And there's a helicopter battalion down there. Like we have helicopters, and it's pretty close to the Panama Canal. And then you get some of the secret squirrel dudes, like the SF dudes that go down there and practice for missions, do missions. I don't know what they do. I was just down there chilling and hanging out. Honduras was an absolute blast. I spent 6 months there, and then came back to Fort Lewis. And that was late 2002. And everybody knows what happened in 2003. That's when the Iraq war kicked off. So I was with 528 Quartermaster Company. We deployed, I want to say in February of 2003. Like we were there in March of 2003 for the initial invasion. Like we didn't go on the initial invasion, but we followed, you know what I'm saying? Because our job we went to what's called LSA Anaconda. Which turned into Balad, if you're familiar with the territory. It don't matter if you're not familiar. But what we did was we set up a fuel farm there. So we had, I think, the biggest fuel farm in RC East, which is like Regional Command East. So everybody would come to get fuel from us. I mean, once we got that thing set up, you could go. I would go to work one day when we got all the bags set up. I would go to work and it would be lines of fuel trucks, like as far as you could see. And we would work a 12-hour shift. And when you left work, it was still a line of fuel trucks as far as you could see. It was crazy. But I was only there at Anaconda for I think it was a few weeks, because one of our squads, we went to Al Asad Air Base and we set up a small 3-bag system for, I forget what unit, 3rd ACR, 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment, their patches, Brave Rifles. But anyway, we went over there and set up a thing for them. But then the crazy thing was, prior to the deployment, I had re-enlisted to go to Fort Stewart, Georgia, which was, on the other side of the country. And at that time, they were still honoring those things, meaning I left Iraq early. My unit did a year, but they sent me home early to PCS. So I did 6 months on the first tour, and I was like, oh, cool, dude, I get out of here. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting out of here early. Yeah, that didn't turn out to be the greatest thing in the world. But anyway, so leave Iraq. The first deployment was, I'm not going to lie to you guys, it was amazing. And the reason I say that, it sucked. We didn't have any electricity. We didn't have any running water to speak of. We didn't have nothing. But we had the people, like everybody was suffering together, right? This was before all the IEDs, which is an improvised explosive device. This was before all of that stuff started happening, right? OIF-1, I had a blast. Even though there was no AC, there was no movies, there was no internet. Like, I can distinctly remember being at Al-Asad Air Base, and they had 3 phones on that entire base, and you had a 5-minute time limit to call your family. And you waited in line like 2 hours to get on the phone. So I was calling home like once a week. But despite all of that, it's the camaraderie that you build with the other people. It's just knowing that other people are going through that with you. And then we had a common job to do. We had something to do. We had a mission to do over there. So get back, go to Fort Stewart, and of course, Fort Stewart is getting ready to deploy. Now, my time at Fort Stewart was crazy. Actually, I wasn't on Fort Stewart. I was in 3rd ID, but I was on Hunter Army Airfield, which is in Savannah, Georgia, and I was in the Aviation Brigade, 3rd CAB, 3rd Combat Aviation Brigade. So it was aviation. That's like the best thing you can be in as a fueler, dealing with aircraft, because, them pilots get treated pretty nice, and you get treated pretty nice, just guilty by association because you're with them. I'm not going to go too in depth into 3rd ID. I had a blast over there. I deployed 3 more times with them. Went to Iraq. We were at Camp Taji over there. That was around 05, 06. And then did a 15-month deployment to Bayap, which is Baghdad International Airport. We were on Camp Stryker. That was a 15-month deployment. I tell you what, man, that was the most demanding point in my Army. That was the most just psychologically knowing you're going to be there for so long. And then the way it was structured sucked because we were sharing room. Like, we had a tent and you had your own little space, but there was no privacy. And then to get to work, we lived on one side of the airfield and our work was on the other side, and you can't just drive across it. So we would have to catch a shuttle and go around. And it took forever just to get to and from work. And then you're waiting for the shuttle. That was the most challenging time. It was crappy. I ain't gonna lie to you. That if I could erase that from my memory, I would. But then anyway, get back. And then, so the funny thing is, while I'm over there, I came down on orders to be a recruiter. And I was like, man, I ain't trying to do this recruiting thing, man. I'm here. Oh my God. I wanted to deploy again with my dudes because that's my dudes. Everybody was fenced in. And when you're in a fenced in unit, that means nobody PCSs. We were all under 48-month fences, so we couldn't go nowhere. So anyway, I got my recruiting orders deferred for 6 months because I just got back from a deployment. Well, there's a catch-22 in there. Once they pushed my time back, I was within 6 months of the deployment window for the next deployment, which was Afghanistan. So I didn't have to go to recruiting. So that was pretty cool. They're like, hey, nah, man, you ain't got to go. I was like, bet. So we went over to Afghanistan. I'm going to tell y'all what, man. I was at Fob Shank in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is dangerous. All right. IDF, just indirect fire, mortar attacks. That is the most fearful time I had while I was in the Army, because the indirect fire, the mortars, it was so frequent and it was so close. I mean, we had some close calls in Afghanistan. Now, I ain't no combat arms dude. I ain't gonna sit there and tell y'all, oh, we were in firefight. No, I ain't got time for that. But I will tell you, the indirect fire and the mortars, it is unnerving, okay? Because just the frequency in which it happened, it will affect you psychologically, and it did me. It really did, but that was scary. So anyway, while I'm over there, I came down on orders to be a recruiter again. And I was like, you know what? Forget this Afghanistan stuff. In my mind, I said, I deployed enough, man. 4 deployments, 3 Iraq, 1 Afghanistan. Let me go take a knee. That's what they called it in the operational Army. You take a knee and go be a recruiter. So I get back and I go to the Army recruiting course. And it's called the ARC. It was at Fort Jackson. It has since moved, but that was a pretty cool course. And the silver lining on that was I started in Apollo Beach, Florida, which was 15 miles from where my parents were. My parents were older, so that worked out pretty nice. So I was stationed there, and then they closed that recruiting station, but I just went right up the street to Brandon, which was just another 20 miles up the street. So the whole time I was on recruiting, I got to hang out with my parents, learned a lot. I absolutely loved recruiting. I loved being a detailed recruiter. But the reason I loved it, because you'll hear people say they hate it. Here's why I loved it. It was the team we had in the office. We had an amazing group of NCOs, non-commissioned officers, in that recruiting station that really kicked butt and was committed to the cause, and we did very well. I ain't gonna say we were the best recruiting station in the command, but we did very well, and we made our mission. It made work fun. When everybody's humming and on the same team, it makes it fun. I had a blast. So while I was on recruiting, my second year, I got selected for Sergeant First Class, or E7, which was a good thing. But I had another year on recruiting as a Sergeant First Class, and the issue is there's like some unspoken things to get promotions, like to get E8 or First Sergeant / Master Sergeant. Like you need so much platoon sergeant time, you need this and that. Part of the story I didn't tell you was I was really lagging on promotions. What I mean is, normally somebody comes in, they're an E4 after 2 years, then maybe after 4 or 5 years, they're an E5 sergeant, then maybe 7, 8 years, they're a staff sergeant. Okay, my path was not like that. I came in, I was an E4, and I was an E4. I stayed at E4 until I had 8, almost 9 years in the Army, right? I came in 98, and I did not make sergeant until 2006. Now, most of that was my fault because I just didn't want to go. But a lot of it was, remember, I told you I was in Thailand, I was in Korea. I was never in one spot too long, like to get promoted. Now, I could have went to the board and did that, but I was never with a non-commissioned officer long enough to, like, a direct supervisor to say, hey, man, you need to take me under their wing and get promoted. But once I started, I didn't stop. So I made sergeant in 2006. And then I made staff sergeant in 2008. I came out on recruiting in 2010 and made sergeant first class on my first look. Like the first time I was eligible, I made it. So that was good. That was out on recruiting. But I still had another over a year left on recruiting. And what I didn't want to do was go back, waste that year on recruiting. And then I needed 24 months of platoon sergeant time to be eligible for E8 or first sergeant, master sergeant, in my MOS, and it was extremely competitive. They didn't promote that many. So I had a choice to make. They were like, hey, do you want to be a permanent recruiter? The promotion, now I'm already doing it, so that's a plus. Then the promotion to the next level, they promote more of the recruiters, which is a 79 Romeo, because there's more positions. And then the icing on the cake, I didn't have to deploy no more. And you can make fun of me, but like I said, I done did 4 deployments. I think that was enough. They were like, so you're converting so you don't got to deploy? I was like, I mean, that's one of the reasons, but that's a big one. Let some of them youngsters, you know what I'm saying, go get their time. Let them get some sand on the boots. And then once they get to 4, you come talk to me. Maybe I'll go back for you. But anyway, so I did the conversion to 79 Romeo. And the crazy thing is when you're in recruiting and you change your job, it's like your job is a recruiter, but you don't really recruit anymore. You run the recruiting station. They call it a station commander. Now, when I did it, it was a center commander, but the Army's always changing stuff. It's a station commander. So anyway, I got an assignment in Miami. So take into consideration these duty stations that I'm telling y'all, man, this is all a factor on, remember, this video is about would I do it again? But like I said, I have to go into my experience for you guys to answer that question. So I decided to convert. I became a station commander in Miami. So I went down there. I was running the station. We were doing well. We were doing really well. But again, that was my team. You know what I'm saying? I had a great team down there. And then our first sergeant got kind of fired. So he got removed out of position. And then they put a new one in. But it wasn't the one that the commander wanted. He did not want the guy. So and I'm not trying to talk myself up or something. He wanted me to be in there. So that was just a bad situation. Long story short, the commander fired that dude and moved me up there. So as a sergeant first class, I was an E7. I was the first sergeant of the company, which is unusual. Normally you're an E8. But what it did was that set me up for promotion. And I made first sergeant. So the E8 rank in the Army, there's 2 positions, master sergeant and first sergeant. All right, the first sergeant is the one with the diamond. Okay, I was never a master sergeant. The whole time I was a diamond wearing first sergeant. The whole time I was an E8. So, but I say master sergeant because somebody in the comments will be kind of get after me. But anyway, so that commander, and I love him to death. We are still friends to this day. We will be lifelong friends. We just clicked. But he wrote my evaluation, and that's what allowed me to get promoted to first sergeant on my first look. Now, I had a choice to make because my wife is in the Navy. During that time, I got married. My wife was in the Navy, and we were really worried if we were going to get co-located together, meaning stationed together. The Army has a program called the MACP, the Married Army Couples Program. And I thought it was only for the Army. Come to find out, it's kind of for all services. But they worked it out because at this time I was eligible to retire. I'm telling you these timelines. This is 2018, right? I joined in 98. I was eligible to retire, but they dangled that promotion in front of me. So that's why if I took it, I owed them 3 years because I really considered retiring then and not taking the promotion so me and the wife could be together because we had a newborn at the time. But anyway, the Army worked it out. I went to San Diego. She got stationed on Coronado. I was the first sergeant for the San Diego North Recruiting Company. And that is where I finished out my time and I retired from out there. So that was kind of a long version of my Army story. But as you can see from how I told it in the enthusiasm, I had a great time while I was in the Army. There was some crappy times along the way that I didn't tell you about, like being on guard duty for a week, doing 12-hour shifts in a tower. But the overall experience I had in the Army was wonderful. So when people ask me, was it worth it? Yes, 100%. If I could recommend to any young person out there, if you don't know what to do, you don't have a career, if you just don't know, go down to a recruiting station, any branch you want, and go and join up and just do 3 years. Just do 4 years. Maybe you'll turn it into a career like I did. I mean, I would recommend to anybody to do the full 20 and do the retirement just because the Army pays well when you've been in for a while. You may go down to the recruiting office and see what the pay scale is and be like, oh man, that's nothing. I think it's like $1,800, $1,900 a month. But what you have to take into account on that is you don't have to pay any rent. They cover that for you. You don't pay any food. They cover that for you. You don't have to pay for any health insurance. And they cover all that for you. And then if you're married, you get a housing allowance, meaning they pay you money to rent a house. Like when we were in California, I was getting $3,100 a month just for my rent, another $350 for food. So don't look at the money initially. You got to look at it down the road because, you know, at E8 in Cali station there, we were making 6 figures, right? And then the retirement check, that is a check that is good for the rest of your life. It would not be hard to find out what I make because the way the Army retirement works, I think they've changed it, but when I retired, at 20 years, you get 50% of your base pay. Every year over 20, you get 2.5% more. So I did 23 years. So I was at 67.5% of my base pay. That's what I get for a retirement check. It maxes out at 30 years and you can get 75%. So that wouldn't be too hard to figure out what I get in retirement, but it is pretty good. So financially, I cannot complain. And then I'm still young enough to where I can do other things. Like, you know, me, I started a clothing brand. That's what's behind me. That's what I decided to do. But on the financial side, it's not that bad. So yes, I would definitely do it again. So I appreciate y'all watching this video. It was kind of long, me rambling on, but I feel like I wanted to give you a full, unabridged version of kind of what someone's experience was like in the Army and a little bit of, you know, my history and what I went through to tell you if I would do it again, wholeheartedly, I would do it again. It was worth it both from the experience, the friends that I made, the people that I met that I'm still in contact with today, and then on the financial side, like where I'm at and the life decisions I've made. I mean, I'm 44, I've been retired a couple years, and I will probably never have a regular job again. Now, life after the Army has some amazing perks. For example, I live in Florida and I'm 100% disabled veteran due to, you know, injury I received through my time there. But even if you're 50% or whatever, as long as you have a disability percentage, which you probably will after spending so much time in, like my property taxes here are 0. So I don't have to pay any property taxes. So that saves money every year. Also, it affords me the time to do what I want to do. So, for example, I've started a YouTube channel. I've got, Facebook, Instagram. Like, I started this clothing brand. It allowed me the opportunity to do that, to own a business to where I didn't need to worry about money. I got a retirement check coming in. I got a disability check coming in. So I can focus on the business and I don't have to worry about my bills getting paid. And that is huge. Now, the reason we're here in Panama City, Florida is because my wife is getting ready to retire. She's stationed here. So once she retires, she's going to kind of go into the same thing that I was doing. So, I tell you guys that to say this, it's very wonderful. I love being able to be retired at a young age. And I don't think I could have done that with any other job other than the military. So to go, would I do it again? Is it worth it? Overwhelmingly, I would. So I hope this helps you guys out. You know what I'm saying? In your decisions, or if you watch the video, I hope you were at least entertained. But hit that like for me, man. Drop a comment. If you want me to do another video, I can go into some war stories from Iraq, Afghanistan. I can talk about starting your business, things like that. But I really appreciate you guys staying with me. And if you don't mind, subscribe to the channel. Y'all take it easy.